And so we're shifting from what we think we need when we look into the future to what we're accomplishing. And Chief WES Sam, who is the chairman of the board of Cool Power, who I work for some of the time, is going to reflect a bit on the progress that we're making with the North Coast Transmission Line, that experience, and what that means for getting new things built with First Nations. Over to you, Chief Sam. Thank you very much.
Good morning. It's good to be here. Maybe we should open up some light in here and open up some doors. It's getting warm and gloomy and dark in here. I do have some slides that I put in at the last minute. If you could just put one up and leave it there while I talk. And then as soon as I get to a certain, there we go. Perfect. So thanks for the invite here today. A very important topic to everybody. In light of the industry in BC, Canada, and internationally, the state we're in worldwide is not looking good. It's not looking good internationally, across the borders, at home, right down to my small town, right down to my small First Nation. We're being affected. Mill closures and steel mills and what have you. Mass unemployment, those are things we want to avoid as a First Nation. That's what I was elected for 3 years, was for economic development and to move that forward. Little did I know that we'd be in this position in the last 2 years, and it looks like it's going to get worse until it gets better. So discussions like this are quite valuable for me to speak to and hear ideas and concepts and what government's doing, what private industry is doing. I see Brian's here, that's great. But with that, I'll just start with my my presentation here. I can't think of a more important opportunity for us to gather than collaborate in the fight against climate change and poverty in First Nations communities, and to create better future for our children and their children's children. The Coastal GasLink project, at times a point of division amongst our First Nations. Even though those discussions took place more than a decade ago, the legacy has not vanished. It remains a part of our shared history. But I also hope and believe many of you feel the same that we learned from those experiences. One of the clearest lessons was we are stronger when we stand together. We advance further when we work cooperatively and in the spirit of collaboration. That's one thing we're doing right now as First Nations through Cool Power and other organizations through BC and Canada. A lot of First Nations are banding together to work together, for better bargaining power. 2 years ago, several First Nations in the Northwest put this belief into practice by signing the Collaboration and Communications Protocol, a commitment to work proactively on shared priorities regarding development of renewable energy infrastructure. That was more than a document. It was created as a foundation of trust, with the possibility of doing things differently. From that foundation, we established a nonprofit organization called Cool Power, a name that signifies and means coming together to work as one. A lot of First Nations in BC across Canada have that word in their own language. It's to work together. We have that in different dialects. Everybody, all First Nations have that. There was numerous names being put forward for that. We argued about, that name, cool. It's actually cool. You got to say it deeper. But it was a cool name, right? K-U-U-L. So it sounded pretty cool. So we chose that. Anyways, it's the first. It is the first organization of its kind, a First Nations-led entity dedicated to developing and operating renewable energy generation and transmission projects across northwestern British Columbia, starting with the NCTL project, which you all know. And while not every nation affected by NCTL is a formal member, many others have contributed, participated, or supported the work in the spirit of collaboration. That spirit, more than any single decision, is what has brought us to where we are today. In July, Cool Power Nations, together with 2 non-cool nations, signed a term sheet with the province of British Columbia, BC Hydro, to build and own Phase 2 of the North Coast transmission line. And now we are working hard on definitive agreements, which we hope to hopefully have done by next year, March 2026. This is a major milestone. By every measure, the works to date have been successful, recognizing that some nations are not yet on board. We are also advancing energy purchase agreements for the Wet'suwet'en and the Tsimshian. The Clo Wind project is moving ahead in the Wet'suwet'en territory as a partnership with us and a Spanish company called Econair. I have up here some slides. I'm going to read through a little bit about Econair and our partnership. Then I'll explain what these slides are. So more than 20 Wet'suwet'en elected and hereditary chiefs and youth went to Spain a month ago to visit Econair and to see their projects. We had the opportunity to visit their hydro, solar, and wind projects. We had a long talk with the owner of the company, the major shareholder, Luis. We had a great chat with him, dinner. We met with the Canadian ambassador to Spain and explained what we were doing and why we were doing it, and he was clearly moved. He responded that what he heard from us gives him hope for the future. So I'm just going to go to the slideshow real quick. I just added these earlier because I've seen a wonderful slideshow from this gentleman here. I put in 10 photos. So we traveled with a delegation of elected and hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en Nation. I also brought along six of my youth from Silcasco, my nation. I brought them there because I've brought them to almost every single negotiation with BC Hydro and every gathering that has happened with NCTL and included them with CLO. They've been involved with me for 2 years at great expense to my band to bring them, to show them what we're working on a day-to-day basis, how boring these negotiations actually are. They learned quite a bit. They've seen what it takes to get to where we are here today. I brought them because this is their project in the end. This is their benefit. This is the clean energy project for our youth. They're the beneficiaries of what we're working on here today. Next slide. So there's some of the delegation. We went through a number of parts of the country in Spain, 3 or 4 different locations in Spain itself. Beautiful, beautiful country. We had a great host. Econair was wonderful. We got to see the most beautiful places in the country. This is a winery we had dinner at, and maybe a little bit of wine. Next slide. This is the ambassador in Spain. We spent about half a day, half a morning with him. Great discussions on with the ambassador, letting them know that we're looking for investment in First Nations and First Nations initiatives and businesses in our communities. So great reception there. Wonderful fellow. Next. So this is one of the dam sites, one of their first projects in Spain. What we liked about Econair is that this is a 100-year-old dam down further below, but they integrate their projects into nature. It's almost nature-based. So you wouldn't think it was a heavy industrial electricity producing facility. It just feels like it's a part of the landscape, not like what you see here. Chain linked fences with all this and that. It's industrial. This project they fit right into the beautiful landscape of Spain. Next. That's one of the old dams. I believe this is a 100-year-old dam. Quite windy to get down to the roads, but it just fits in. It was beautiful. A lot of the chiefs, myself, and the youth really loved what this company is doing. Next slide. That's some of the turbines. Next slide. Same facility, another turbine. Next slide. We had a dinner at a really beautiful place. I forget the name of this restaurant. La Coruña. Beautiful place. That's where we met the top boss of Econair, Luis. So I told my young adults, it took us 2 years to finally get to the top boss, like a video game, right? We're at the top boss. We had dinner with him. Great fellow. I believe we're going to be doing something with them, but it opened up our youth to what's out there. Some of these youth would never had the opportunity to ever travel internationally. It opened their eyes up to that. It opened up their eyes to partnerships. It opened up their eyes to working with other First Nations. So a lot was accomplished by bringing them to all these meetings. It also helps me educate members at home at the dinner table. When there's false statements, everybody gets false statements to, no, they're doing this, no, they're doing that. I actually, the young adults go, no, this is what we know, because they're heavily involved. So I will continue to keep them involved in all projects moving forward, for sure. Next slide. There's myself and the young adults. Great crew, enthusiastic, looking forward to opportunities to work. They want to work in these industries. They want retraining. They want to be retooled. They want to make big dollars. They want a house. They want to move off res. There's a lot of ambitions that they have and they want to do. And through these clean energy projects, that's the opportunity, and they see it. They see it. They were there at the tables, like I said, for 2 years, and we got to Spain to look at all the projects. So it was a great trip. It was 2 weeks. So anyways, I went into that a little bit. I just added that, but I'll just finish my report or presentation. So NCTL and CLO are not theoretical concepts. These are two real, tangible signs of progress, but none of this has been easy. Historic relations among our First Nations we've not been encouraged to collaborate. Yet today, the benefits of working together, acting as partners rather than competitors, are beginning to outweigh our differences. We are seeing what becomes possible when we align around shared interests, shared opportunities, and shared responsibilities. But there's also a clear truth: the work ahead will require even deeper cooperation. If we truly want to build an energy future that reflects our values and strengths of our communities, our collaboration must continue to grow. We have to take control of ideas and proposals that divide us. We have to discuss the implications, and if we decide to move forward, share the benefits and the risks. Our previous speakers told us what energy is required in the future. Across Canada, other experts believe that we need to double or even triple our clean energy capacity to meet future demands and to meaningfully confront climate change, which is still very important to everybody here, or you wouldn't be here. It's clearly important to Silcasco and First Nations across BC and Canada and internationally. COP30, a lot of that was discussed. I had a great opportunity, and I went to COP29 and spoke there with these two gentlemen in Azerbaijan. It was a great experience. I hope to go to the next one, which I believe is in Turkey. Anyways, what is clear to need to accelerate development? NCTL and CLO have taken years to reach agreements, and we need many, many more like them. As an example, we need to consider SMRs, which are designed to be more flexible, scalable than traditional reactors, and can be used in smaller electrical grids, remote communities, industrial processes. We can't let ideas divide us. Instead, they need to bring us together for real discussion. When I say SMRs, some people, their hair goes up on the back of their necks. I just want to explore it. these youth, my nation, my band wants to explore it. SMRs. What does that mean? What does that mean for water use? How clean is it? So this group and even more will be traveling throughout BC and Canada and maybe internationally, touring and exploring and talking to and doing on our own work to decide ourselves what we want. There's no path forward without sustained unity, shared decision-making, and collective commitment. The stark reality is that we must move faster and that we are moving today much faster. And that requires working together more extensively, more intentionally, and more decisively than we ever had before. And collaboration is not optional. To meet the scale of what is needed, new transmission lines, renewable energy projects, new partnerships, new governance models, our nation must work together more deeply and more consistently than ever before. New energy is bioenergy, thermal energy, things like that. As our forestry economy is declining before our eyes on a daily basis, bioenergy and other technologies, we're wide open to ideas, especially looking at the bio in our own region with the collapse of mills. It's getting pretty scary. I don't like to watch the news anymore. Every day something horrible's happening. With that, we truly have to work together with First Nations, BC government, industry, federal government, and those who want to follow along with us internationally, investors and what have you. So I really do look forward to the rest of the day and hearing everybody out and see what comes down the road of what we're trying to do. With that, thank you. Awetsa.
Thanks very much, Chief Sam. I'm just going to ask you to hold the questions, and our next speaker is Cole Sayer, Kwatuma, who is the Executive Director of Clean Energy BC. And we can, if you've put your questions into the chat, and if we don't get them answered on the floor in the discussion, we'll get them answered in the summary of the meeting. Okay? Cole, are you teed up?
Okay, we're good. All right. So see a thumbs up. So I'll get started. And I can't see my presentation, but I think you'll probably see a picture of me. And so I am the Executive Director of Clean Energy BC. Thank you to Cool Power, to Alex and Chief West Sam for the invitation to speak here today. I wish I could be there with you guys, but unfortunately I couldn't make it today. I want to thank my previous speakers with Anthea and the planning team over at BC Hydro. They have a hard job and they do it really well. And she and Mike had made some really great points there. So hopefully I can just kind of build on it from the perspective of the IPP industry. So you can go to the next slide. And I saw some familiar faces, so I won't go into too much detail about Clean Energy BC, other than that, we represent a diverse number of folks, which includes industry members, the developers, private developers, engineers, lawyers, and as well as over 60 BC First Nations who participate at our events and in our First Nations steering committee. Next slide, please. And it has been a busy couple of years for us. All of the successful proponents in the 2024 Call for Power are our members. And Chief West Sam spoke well about one of our members, Ika Wenor. One of our members, the Clearly Tene Nation, also is partnering them, and they got a contract in this 2024 Call for Power. And it's great to see that they, are committed to working with BC First Nations and are really investing in those relationships. And that speaks to our industry for a long time. There's been a lot of long-standing relationships between First Nations and industry working together to create opportunities for ourselves and to really demonstrate the benefits of those projects. And so you can go to the next slide, please. Now, I do want to provide us a brief overview of what we do today. We have a number of member-driven committees that have been hard at work over the past couple of years. The main one has been government relations, focusing mostly on aligning electricity and policy targets, and really kind of looking at Clean BC. And I know Mark did a really good presentation on that. Regulatory efficiency. We've been a strong advocate for regulatory efficiency, removing duplications so that we can make sure that we meet our targets and build within the timelines that we have. We have short timelines to get these projects online. And I'm confident now with the path forward that we're going to work together with industry, First Nations, government, the energy regulator to ensure that this is a successful, streamlined permitting process. And on the IRP, I won't get too much into that right now, but I think there's been a lot of great things spoken about that already, but we are going to be intervening at BCUC and hopefully be a productive intervener and provide constructive feedback in there. Also, solar battery. A lot of our members are solar installers, and a number of First Nations too have small scale solar installations on community buildings. So we are advocating on their behalf also through BCUC intervening on net metering. Next slide, please. And there's just some recent government announcements that where CBC is playing a part in the 2024 call for power, as well as the BC Energy Regulator designation. We're all very happy with the work that we've done today. We still have a lot of work to do, and we're busy in the background trying to make sure that we get it right. Next slide, please. Now, a big part of my advocacy has been speaking to the benefits of nation-led clean energy projects. In First Nations ownership means nations are sitting at the decision-making table, shaping governance and building true partnerships that bring long-term certainty for both nations and project proponents. Equity provides nations with direct influence over project strategy and decision-making. And with long-term project lifespan, ownership guarantees stable revenues and opportunities. There was mention around EPA contract renewals. One of my nation is one of those, has been one of those involved in renegotiating that contract. I'm not involved, so I don't know the status of it. But that project has provided long-term careers to several of my members and has been transformative for those individuals. So certainly, a lot of local long-term benefits to the nation and to the region. Yukula First Nation and the City of Port Alberni are also partners in that project, as well as a industry partner that has recently switched, actually. But true partnerships with industry proponents create certainty for the nation and the proponent as projects are developed and executed together. And ownership creates pathways for jobs, training, contracting, and reinvestment back into communities so that the First Nations are benefiting. Next slide, please. Now, looking ahead, I think from our perspective, I think that we're certainly grateful to be at the table at the IRP Technical Advisory Committee, and CBC once again will be a constructive and respected intervener, supporting the work of BCUC, BC Hydro, and making compelling arguments based in expert evidence and member accountability through our IRP committee. And we'll make effective arguments that the IRP scenarios fall short of the likely load growth, particularly the reference case, and that clear signals need to be made on the next call for power after 2025 in alignment with the province's Look West strategy and Clean Power Action Plan. We'll also argue for the meaningful inclusion of legislated climate targets in scenarios. Now, I think, and I agree with Mark, and I think others have said that, there's more risk in underbuilding than overbuilding. And it's important that we're not short of power. And the other important piece in that is we have been rushing these last calls for power, and it's been very challenging for nations, particularly those smaller nations. Because it can be very expensive in the pre-development costs and negotiations, and there's no real way to find money for that. So it's challenging when not only you're doing these complex negotiations, but you're doing things that normally are, over 6 months, but you're doing it within 3 weeks. So it's not ideal. And so I think, smaller long-term procurements will help nations and industry with certainty and develop those partnerships over time, so we're not rushing. And I know this isn't BC Hydro's plan. Things are just how it happens with the change in timelines for this call. But we are doing our best, and we're all working together. And so it's really encouraging that that we are able to do that, and it's certainly very encouraging as we look forward. Next slide, please. And these are just some of the intersection of a number of policy goals and provincial goals that clean energy finds itself in, and the basis of a lot of our advocacy around reconciliation, climate targets, economic development, and clean electricity. So next slide, please. Just an overview of the First Nations partnerships in BC. We've been a long time proponent of aligning our sector, electricity, clean energy with UNDRIP in terms of a proactive approach where these nations are demonstrating a tangible expression of self-determination. This is, projects that the nations are interested in. They see the role that they play within, decarbonization or the energy transition. And the other part too is the benefits. Not just the equity ownership, but the non-equity benefits of jobs, training, contracting opportunities, and long-term operations opportunities. And partnerships are key to that. With our industry partners, however that looks and whatever they are. I think there's been a lot of great successful examples of partnerships in BC, and it's one that I'm proud to advocate for, and I've had the privilege to see a number of those in person. Next slide, please. And just a quick overview of what the economic impact is. 90% of BC's IPPs have First Nations involvement, and it ranges from the early stages of smaller equity portions of royalty agreements, full owners. In the 2024 call, we're in a much different wave of clean energy. Where 8 of the 10 projects are 51%. I think 9 of the projects are over 50%, and 1 or 2 are below at 49. But it's valued at $2.53 billion in equity, and it's certainly huge when you look at the clean energy industry 20 years ago. And the First Nations involvement in those projects are key to successful project completion and support. That is why we want to support those nations with our steering committee as we move forward. And recently, we've worked with Indigenous Clean Energy with the support of BC Hydro to provide an equity guide, which we're going to be launching next week to support First Nations in negotiations around how to, or at least what to think of in terms of key considerations when they're negotiating clean energy contracts. So stay tuned for that. Next slide, please. And my last message is working together. So please feel free to reach out. We are very happy to collaborate with folks who have shared goals, and we do what we do as a team, as a collective, as a collaborator. And I think that's what is making this energy with our industry, the momentum, so encouraging. So it's been a privilege to be part of that. Next slide, please. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So we just adjusted the schedule so that Dave is going to provide his keynote a bit later, and Ron Monk is going to kind of wrap up the morning. But before we go there, just any kind of quick questions for either Wes or Cole or both of them? I have one. When you, Cole, Wes, when you look into the future, the immediate future, and all the work that you're both doing in this renewable energy environment, this development environment, what's your biggest concern? What's your fear? What is it that's going to undermine your capacity to deliver?
Capacity dollars. An investment from BC federal government into our projects. For example, one with BC Hydro, there's an incredible amount of capital that has to be raised, and we're looking to raise that. I know we will, but we're looking at different scenarios with different interest rates. 1%, 2%, 3% is a difference between 25 to 50 to $75 million profit for the First Nations. So capital investments from the Carney government, from the BC government, are essential, and I wish they would look harder at that in supporting, put their money where their mouths are, and support First Nations and our projects that were clearly stated by BC government and Carney that we're a perfect partnership in Canada right now is 50% First Nations. It's great, but when you're talking about billion-dollar projects, you know, don't even have $100,000 in the bank. That's pretty tough. So more support financially through our financial systems, through our governments, and what have you. We're doing our part. We're working together. I mean, we're working closer with our neighbors, our First Nations, trying to come to some agreements on how we're going to move forward on the land. We're doing that. The government should also put their money where their mouths are and assist 100% when it comes to these projects that are deemed national security.
Yeah, and that's a great answer.
Thanks.
And I would just add to that, the current financial supports aren't sufficient, as Chief said. The BC loan guarantee program, hopefully it'll be out soon, but that alone would barely be enough for the North Coast Transmission First Nations equity participation. It's like $250 million over 4 years. So it's not a lot when you start looking at these large infrastructure projects that are in the hundreds and more likely billions of dollars. And the equity portions for First Nations are, increasingly large. It's very hard for the small nations to access, affordable capital. I guess the only other point I'd add too is, just more uncertainty or potential uncertainty with respect to, any sort of policy, legislation, or regulatory that could impact these projects, whether it's, a large piece of infrastructure needed to support, decarbonization goals for certain jurisdictions. So having long-term certainty so we can start planning so that the nations around those areas can start acting as proponents and being the driver of those projects and start finding the partners and capitals that's going to be required to build them.
Thanks, Cole. Thanks, Wes. I'm just going to pile on since I'm pretty close to the file. So to be more specific, the contributions from CIB are hugely appreciated. They top out at $100 million a pop. In $1 billion or a multi-billion-dollar transmission line, that's not enough. Federal loan guarantees are needed. The provincial loan guarantee program is insufficient and probably is not going to grow given the budget deficit that the province is currently getting crushed by. And we don't have investment tax credits for intra-provincial transmission lines of national significance. Yet we provide investment tax credits for all those wind projects, which is a good thing. So we could provide investment tax credits, which would increase the ability of nations to step up even more than they are now, and we could build more faster. And for a reflection on what we need to build, we have Ron Monk, who many of you know. Ron has been working in the province as an engineer probably since he became an engineer. And has a ton of experience and has been a real supporter of the First Nations Climate Initiative, as well as many of the nations that are involved here. So thanks very much, Ron, and over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. So I don't have a dog in the background like Cole had, so it's just me. If you guys are going to pull up my slides. I was talking to Anthea earlier, and I used to have her job when I was at BC Hydro. So I was responsible for the 2004 integrated electricity plan, as it was called then. On Alex's point, I graduated from engineering school at UBC in 1987, and my very first project that I started working on was a small hydro project near Stewart that has since been built. So I've been in this my entire career. What I'm going to talk about is BC's future power needs, and specifically how we shape the resources to meet customers' demand, because that's a really important part of this puzzle. A number of people have talked about this. You need the energy, which is like the gasoline in the gas tank or the storage in the battery, but you also need the peak output, which is like the size of the engine or the size of the electric motor in an electric car. And when you bring on resources such as solar and wind that are intermittent, variable resources that are quite unpredictable, you need to shape those to meet needs. So I'm going to talk about electricity load. I'll talk about electricity resources, and then a bit of a discussion. This image is of the sort of the backbone of BC Hydro system, where a lot of the resources are in the northeast and southeast of the province, and there's of course a massive transmission system to bring it to where most of the loads are, Lower Mainland, Vancouver Island, and as has been discussed, the North Coast. So electrification is a big factor, as has been discussed in terms of electricity load. Electric vehicles. This is I actually have a car like this one, and one of the things to keep in mind. That car has 450 kilometers of range, so it's got a 90 kilowatt hour battery. BC Hydro does have a rate that I'm signed on to that encourages me to charge in the non-peak periods, which I sometimes do, but mainly I'm lazy and I just plug it in and when I get home. But there's a battery on board that really could be much more integrated in the electricity system, because there are times when I would be happy to let BC Hydro draw on that battery. And right now there's a whole bunch of things that don't allow that to happen. I do want it to be full and ready to go when I need to get somewhere, but otherwise I'm okay if they use it. They're going to need to pay me to do it. As was mentioned, heat pumps for heating and cooling is a big driver. And then a lot of process conversion in industrial systems. So right now I'm working on a project for a cold water band, and they're near Merritt. Enbridge is expanding and electrifying a compressor station there on their West Coast energy system that brings the natural gas to Lower Mainland. So there's going to be a 40 megawatt load at that compressor station once it's converted to electricity and expanded. So this is compressor station 8A on Enbridge's system. So other compressor stations are being changed from natural gas fired compressors to electric drive compressors. And the industrial side, liquefied natural gas has been talked about, hydrogen, and the province is weirdly making that not allowed. And I really don't understand that. And I'm in a position where I'm allowed to say things like that now. Huge opportunities in mining, and then data centers. And as I asked a question earlier about the use of brownfield industrial sites for data centers, because the electricity infrastructure and other infrastructure is already there for those types of locations. On the demand, in terms of resources, there's BC Hydro's Power Smart, energy efficiency, rate design, and smart equipment. So one of the things that I would really encourage us to talk about more is, let's make the equipment smart. I don't want to have to go and unplug my car or plug it in. I want it to talk to the utility and charge my car when it's inexpensive and convenient for the utility. That's a job that AI can do for sure. And there are many, many opportunities. If you think about lots of electricity use that we have in our homes, your fridge is for keeping your beer and your food cold. You don't really care when it runs. It's important that it be within a certain range of temperature for food safety, but there's no reason why refrigerators and freezers and heat pumps and lots of other things that we have in our homes could be integrated more with the energy system, so they're running at times that are convenient for the overall meeting of the customer's needs. Cooling of homes, heating and cooling of homes is the same. You want your home or the place you're in to be within a certain range of temperature when the actual device is running doesn't matter to most of us. And so there's huge opportunities to be tapped there in making equipment smarter. On the supply side, I've put some things on here that aren't allowed in British Columbia right now. So there's a moratorium against nuclear. I'm actually working on for the Mississauga of Scugog Island First Nation, which is located northeast of Toronto. We're actually working on Pickering and Darlington expansions right now. I think the idea of looking at small modular reactors in British Columbia as an option, that needs to be opened up, and the province needs to be involved, because right now BC Hydro can't really look at it in any serious way because there's a moratorium that limits it. And there's other moratoriums that are potentially being opened up, but I'll just leave that alone. Hydroelectric, wind and solar, tidal and waves. There's geothermal, natural gas. So natural gas is kind of constrained from the conversation because unless it has carbon capture and sequestration, it's not an allowed resource by BC Hydro right now, which might not be the best plan, because natural gas peakers can be part of the solution. If they're not run for long periods of time, it can be a really effective way to meet peak. Brian Fuhr was mentioning wood waste and municipal solid waste. I think we should be, making more safety barriers between exposed communities and the forest to ensure that those communities are safe from forest fires. And that's a great resource to use for wood waste. And then I've put coal on here. Coal has been part of the electricity puzzle in a lot of the world. It's interesting. British Columbia is one of the largest exporters of coal in the world. It's metallurgical coal, mainly from southeast and northeast BC, but we're strangely weird about coal. We're happy to get the revenues associated with exporting this metallurgical coal for steel making, but thermal coal for power generation is not on the table in British Columbia at this time. And I'm not really advocating for it. I'm just trying to provide a complete list. So one of the things that's happened with respect to offshore wind, when the Naikun wind project was proposed for the Hecate Strait a couple of decades ago now, the wind turbines would have been like 2 to 4 megawatts each. Now wind turbines are way bigger for offshore, 15, 20 megawatts. And they're not constrained the way land-based wind turbines are, where you've got to get all the equipment there, but you're not doing it by road, you're doing it by big ships. And so these can be huge. And when you make them larger, when you make them taller, you get to a better wind resource. And so Hecate Strait is one of the richest wind resources in the world. Whether it's a good idea to put wind generation there, that's a good conversation. Obviously, Indigenous communities need to be involved, but it is a fantastic wind resource. This is a solar farm in the Silkatine. We recently did a solar assessment for a community in the interior of British Columbia, and solar is really close to being economic in British Columbia. There's one solar project out of the 2024 call. The cost of solar panels has dropped dramatically. It's been declining at about 5% per year for since the 90s. The equipment for conversion from solar panels produce direct current power, and so the equipment to convert it to alternating current is improved and cheaper than it used to be. And when I say cheaper, I mean cheaper in real terms, so taking inflation out. Peakers and storage. So this is really the heart of what I was asked to talk about. How do you take these intermittent resources or base load resources and have it meet customers' demands? And as I mentioned earlier, a big part of that is changing the customer demand so that it's shaped to better suit when the resources are available. One of the things that I'm surprised isn't happening more in California, and I have a curve to talk about California in a moment, it would be so much smarter to pre-cool homes during peak solar time in California and then coast through once peak solar is over, because you get so much opportunity for thermal energy storage in the buildings. And so if you cool the building down to 18 degrees Celsius at 3 p.m., then by 6 or 7 p.m. it's still going to be below 22 degrees Celsius, or I guess we should be using the Fahrenheit scale if we're talking about California, but you know what I'm talking about. So this is a curve. Actually, I didn't talk enough about here. I talked about trade, smart appliances, rates, natural gas combustion turbines as peakers, pump storage hydro, and I've got a graphic on that in a minute. Flywheels, batteries, and hydro used for storage are all important in the shaping of things to meet demand. So this is the actual demand in California last week during a weekday, and weekdays are more normal, if you like, than weekends. And I'll just talk about the elements of this. So the bottom is baseload nuclear plants, and I think the gentleman from New Brunswick has used, we were at a previous one of these, and he talked about this being like a hockey team. This is your analogy, right? And this is the goalie. You hardly ever pull a goalie, only in desperation, like the Canucks last night against the Avalanche, that you pull them at the end. The next here, this is fossil fuel resources. And so the fossil fuel resources are more flexible than the nuclear. And so this would be gas-fired turbines that they turn down when the solar's coming up. This is the big yellow blob here is the solar energy. So it's a massive amount of production in California. Even now, this was last week, as I said. And so they reduce the output from the fossil fuel fired plants as as the solar peak comes up. And then after the solar peak drops off, then they pick up the fossil fuel again. The green is what they call other renewables. So this is things besides solar, wind, and hydropower. So there's geothermal resources in California. So it'll be mainly geothermal in there. And some municipal solid waste and wood waste. The blue is hydropower, and they have a lot of the hydropower in California has big storage reservoirs. And so what they're doing when the solar comes on is they reduce the output of the hydropower and run it, gently through the peak solar. One of the things with hydropower is usually minimum flow requirements downstream, and BC Hydro has that at many of its facilities through its water use planning process, a requirement to provide a minimum flow downstream for aquatic and recreational and other interests. And then the darker yellow on here is variable wind, and that's unpredictable, sort of. But in California, there's a lot of wind that picks up in the evenings because land heats up and pulls, and then the hot air rises and it pulls the cooler air in from over the ocean. And so they get a lot of evening wind. And someone mentioned this earlier. And then obviously this huge solar in the middle here, starting, at early in the day. Then the red here, and this is amazing. This is imports. This is California buying power from other places like British Columbia. And so what British Columbia is doing, we were probably providing a chunk of this red, and then we kind of shut it off during the peak solar period, and then turn it back on later and ship more power to them. But this is imports coming from all sorts of, from Bonneville Power and from others in the interconnected West Coast energy system. And then the blue on top here, this is batteries. And so what's happening here is that during this peak solar time, there's a massive amount of energy going into battery energy storage. And then that's being drawn on during other times, during this peak time, to help to meet this peak load. And the dotted line is the actual customer load. And you can see there's other things going on here where there was a bit of, like even between the hour here where they were exporting at this time, but then over the peak lunch hour or whatever this is, they were actually importing. So it's happening, within the hour in terms of how much they're changing things. So this same thing happens in British Columbia, but it's just less dramatic because it's mainly the hydroelectric that's varying in British Columbia to meet the load. And we have obviously not very much solar, and we're adding a bit of wind. One of the things that can help with the wind is geographic diversity of it. So if you think about a wind project on the north end of Vancouver Island, does the shape of that have anything to do with the shape of a wind resource in Northeast BC? Probably not connected, probably independent. So I think that there is a massive opportunity for pump storage in British Columbia. It's a resource that BC Hydro will understand very clearly because it's like a hydroelectric resource. The big difference is that during low load periods, you run the turbines backwards and you pump water from the lower reservoir to the upper reservoir. And then that water is then available during the peak period to run through the turbines and over to the lower reservoir. This is an actual site in British Columbia this site was submitted into BC Hydro's request for expression of interest for capacity. And if you really know the geography of British Columbia, you might be able to figure out where this is. It's by a river. It's on a mountain. But that doesn't tell you much. It provides a great opportunity for integrating these intermittent resources that we're adding, deferring transmission, and to further optimize trade. That's it.
Well, thank you, Ron. And this sets us up for this afternoon's discussion where we're going to focus on nuclear. Even though there's a moratorium on nuclear in British Columbia right now, I think many of us believe that's not going to live forever. And we need to be thinking about nuclear options. And two of the nations that are very closely affiliated with FNCI are very interested in nuclear and are here today because of this set of presentations that are coming up. So we're only going to take a half an hour for lunch. So we'll be back at 1 o'clock for those of you online. And we'll start at 1, and we have a mix of online speakers as well as people in the room. So thanks very much.